Hello, dear friends. An astrologer friend of mine told me 50 years ago that the transition from Pisces to Aquarius couldn't be smooth in any way, because they are two incompatible signs. Opinion piece. Do not fear the awakening. Collapse foretold. Welcome the change. Harder will be the fall. It could be a chaotic event. Emergency landing. Braced for impact. No one said it would be easy. Gullibility had a price. The gullible will get scared. We are the white hats. Some have parachuted in. Government will be 10% of its present size. There will be no more two-party systems in any country. We will switch to the Julian calendar of 28 days and 13 months. The next 10 to 12 weeks would be a crazy roller coaster ride. Let's start. Fear not a collapse, for it is necessary to dismantle evil and give humankind a path to freedom, says Mike Adams. Prepare to rebuild the next society with a new pro-human and pro-freedom structure. We are the white hats who must defeat evil and dismantle the yoke. This is not a soft landing, but an emergency landing. Success depends to a large extent on the pilot's decision-making skills, knowledge of his aircraft, its characteristics, and the terrain on which to land. A forced landing is a decent procedure that must be carried out for reasons that occur during the flight and that compromise the safety of the flight. Generally, it is carried out on an aerodrome or terrain that is not planned, and sometimes the normal landing procedures are not followed. Depending on the state of the weather, the aircraft and the crew, it is not always possible to make an emergency landing. On these occasions, it is better to abandon the aircraft in flight, if that option is available. Some have already parachuted. Chaotic event. An engineered global meltdown is underway right now. There is no doubt that it has already begun, and it is a chaotic event. However, in the aftermath of the collapse, it also presents humankind with the opportunity to decide a different future after this system changes. It is in this decision that humankind can find freedom and prosperity. The future of money will be found in decentralization, which gold and silver automatically achieve. There is no central bank to issue gold, for example, and the supply is limited by the laws of physics and geology, as it is very difficult to mine. Similarly, there are also technologies for decentralized financial transactions and decentralized speech, where no central authority can decide to silence you because it doesn't like what you are saying. Humankind can never be free as long as it suffers under centralized control. Fortunately for all of us, that centralized system is self-destructing at an astonishing rate, and yet, unfortunately for us, that system will cause tremendous devastation as it catches fire, which means that those who do not prepare for the consequences may not survive the transition to a post-globalist world. Instead of fearing collapse, we should welcome change. What awaits humankind after the fire of this regime burns to ashes is a world of far greater opportunity, abundance and freedom. In the meantime, those living in reality will be well placed to help rebuild society with small distributed local businesses that produce real things. That is to say, products and services, rather than existing to borrow government loans and bail out money. If humankind can achieve a honest monetary system that is backed by gold and not subject to endless currency printing, we, the people, will achieve unlimited prosperity by being able to keep and invest money we earn through our ideas and efforts. Again, do not fear collapse. Prepare for it and welcome it, for it is the necessary next step for humankind to overthrow the global Luciferian cult that currently rules the world, replacing it with a pro-human, pro-God, pro-life civilization that honors and respects life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Imminent prognosis. On Phil's Vader Up live show, he said it's about time, in quotes. By next weekend, Saturday 15th to Sunday 16th October, we are going to see a big public event. Once this event unfolds, things will start cascading at a breakneck pace. It will be shocking, but in a good way, said Phil. It will be a white hat operation, but it will look like a black hat operation. This gentleman believes the announcement will come in the next 2 weeks, before Saturday 22nd October. But that is just a personal opinion. The banks have lost their way to create revenue. There is no charge for moving money anywhere. Interest rates will be much lower than now. On Saturday, 1st October, the new financial fiscal year began, plus Venezuela introduced its new gold and asset-backed Bolivar currency by dropping 6 zeros. On Monday, 10th October 2022, bond liquidation outside the US was reported. The historic bond liquidation would be a major event that would trigger a cascade of events in the BRICS. All falsehoods in the emergency transmission system will be revealed. Also, in the last week of October, several countries are expected to be taken over. It is expected that the reserve will be activated in the US, Canada, the UK, the European Union, Iceland, South America, Mexico, African regions, Malaysia, and more than 80 other countries. The next 2 to 12 weeks will be a crazy roller coaster, but the white hats are in total control. Look to God for direction. We will switch to the 28th day, 13 months Julian calendar, with the first day of the new year being Easter. Thanksgiving and Christmas can no longer be celebrated on the same dates. There will be no more two-party systems in any country. Government will be 10% of its current size. People have already been selected for the new positions. Those doing humanitarian projects would not have to sign an oath or contract to receive their money, but they have to fulfill their responsibility. Americas. The United Nations calls for debt relief for 54 countries, including several Latin American countries. The United Nations condemns the Mexican army's spying on journalists and activists. Chile and Costa Rica joined the United Nations Human Rights Council. The Atacama Desert, the driest desert in the world, is once again waking its flourishing miracle in northern Chile. Argentina creates a public company to develop medical cannabis. South America's first Trump Tower opens in Punta del Este, Uruguay, after almost a decade of controversy. Indigenous leaders in Peru seek protection for the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights over oil spills. Economy. The world will slow down more in 2023, and many countries will face recession. The world economy will slow down more than expected in 2023, a year in which a large part of the world will face recession or end up falling into it. According to the International Monetary Fund, which has lowered its growth forecast for the next year by 0.2 of a percentage point to 2.7%. The IMF has again lowered its growth forecast for the USA to 1.6%, 0.7 of a percentage point less than that calculated in July, although the estimate for 2023 remains at 1%. Germany, the UK, China and the US are seeing a systemic meltdown with a stock market crash, gas and coal shortages, and an inability to produce enough electricity for global goods production. Global inflation in the construction industry is wiping out small businesses. Europe. Russia is ready to supply more gas to Europe. Russia will not supply energy to countries that limit oil prices. Entire European cities could freeze during the winter cold snap, says Gazprom. European Union turns to Africa to replace Russian gas. Leak detected in pipeline carrying crude oil to Germany. Poland detects a leak in the Druzhba pipeline, key to supplying Europe. The French government intervenes to put an end to strikes in the fuel sector. The Austrian finance minister denounces the most serious crisis since the Second World War. King Charles III of Great Britain is crowned on May 6th. Egyptian archaeologists demand the return of the Rosetta Stone from London. Saudi Arabia rejects US request to delay oil production cut. The United Nations denounces abuses against migrants in Libya to make them return to their country. UNICEF condemns the detention and killing of children in Iranian protests. Chinese surveillance. Spain reportedly has the most CCP police stations abroad. Safeguard Defenders, a human rights organization based in Spain, reported that Spain has the most Chinese Communist Party police stations abroad. In September, the organization revealed a report claiming that Chinese authorities set up so-called 110 overseas police stations outside mainland China, which repatriate Chinese using coercion, according to a security policy expert, but could also be used for sabotage or espionage. At least 54 Chinese police stations were established in 30 different countries, including one in New York, according to the report. In Spain, 9 Chinese police stations were identified, 3 of them in Madrid, 3 in Barcelona, 2 in Valencia, and 1 in Santiago de Compostela. These police stations were established by the Public Security Bureau in Fuzhou, Fujian Province, and by the Public Security Bureau of Xinjiang County, Zhejiang Province. Peter Dalling, director of the organization, told the newspaper El Correo that some of these stations could have a positive purpose, but at the same time acknowledged that they are also serve to launch police operations that undermine Spain's sovereignty. Such police stations have also been identified in Latin America. The report identifies at least 1 in Buenos Aires, Argentina, 1 in Viña del Mar, Chile, 1 each in Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and 1 in Guayaquil and Quito, Ecuador. This results in at least a dozen CCP service stations in the Americas, including the 3 identified in Toronto, Canada, and the 1 in New York. Last week, 21 U.S. Republican lawmakers sent a letter to Attorney General Merrick Garland and Secretary of State Antony Blinken questioning the presence of Chinese service stations in New York City for violating U.S. sovereignty. The station that was established in Buenos Aires, Argentina, which is under the jurisdiction of the Public Security Bureau in Fuzhou, opened in February this year. According to Chinese state media, China, this police station aims to provide, in quotes, to provide overseas Chinese with driver's license and ID card replacement and immigration service. These police service stations are part of the first batch of 30 Fuzhou overseas police service stations, which according to the state media were established in cooperation with overseas associations with a large number of Fuzhou Chinese nationals. The report notes that Chinese authorities claim that from April 2021 to July 2022, some 230,000 overseas Chinese nationals were persuaded to return to their home country to face criminal charges. This would be part of an alleged nationwide campaign by Beijing to combat telecom fraud. Such a campaign was developed since 2018, along with the installation of Chinese police service stations abroad. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends.